The feds releasing notes from their investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email setup, including details of the FBI's interview one-on-one with Hillary Clinton. Here are some of the highlights. Secretary Clinton never asked for permission to use a private server or email address while she was Secretary of State. However, Clinton also said she wasn't trying to sidestep any laws about federal records, that it was just a matter of convenience. She also turned down a State Department mail account when she began her job. Clinton told investigators everybody at the State Department knew she had a private email address and nobody ever raised any concerns. We're also learning that Clinton's team apparently had trouble keeping track of her many phones. In the report, Clinton aides said the secretary often replaced her BlackBerry and, quote, the whereabouts of Clinton's devices would frequently become unknown once she transitioned to a new device. In fact, one aide said a couple of times he destroyed phones by breaking them in half or hitting them with a hammer, the good old-fashioned way. Catherine Herridge with the news now live in Washington. And Catherine, Clinton claims it seems that she really didn't know how the whole setup worked.
That's right, Greg. There were two documents that were released by the FBI this afternoon. The critical document is this document. It's called the 302. That's what the FBI calls a summary of an interview. The FBI does not traditionally record interviews. So in the Clinton case, that was also true, and there's no transcript. There's just this summary of the FBI agent's notes who questioned her. What's really stunning as you read this document is again and again and again, Hillary Clinton, on very key questions, says she simply does not recall. She does not recall when she got her security clearance. She does not recall whether she got specialized training for handling classified information. She doesn't recall whether she had special briefings for handling what's called special access program intelligence. These are some of the government's most closely held secrets.
I count 30, 40 times where she said, I don't recall.
Here is her memory, which seems abysmal. Could not recall training on classified information. Catherine just mentioned that. Could not recall using your power to classify. Could not recall receiving emails that should not be on an unclassified system. Could not recall briefings she received when she left office because of her 2012 concussion. Kristen, defense attorneys always tell their clients, if you don't want to get charged, just say, I don't recall. And that's all over these 60 pages.
Oh, yeah, it's just excuse after excuse from this woman. This is just being treated with a complete lack of seriousness.
She doesn't look like she was completely in command or in control, but that wasn't the point. She was trying to get through that 3-hour interview without a criminal referral, and she succeeded in that.
Mrs. Clinton said she used the account for convenience, but there was absolutely no follow-up from the agents about what that exactly meant, because we now understand that she had multiple devices, there were multiple servers, yet they don't press her on this issue. And this is one of the main criticisms of the Republicans who had read this document, and this criticism seems very well founded.
The chain of custody in terms of all of the technology that might have housed these emails and might have connected to these servers, including the archives and the servers themselves, is very, very loose. And in fact, there's a laptop.
Reckless loose?
Well, there's a laptop that held the archives that nobody knows where it is. There's a thumb drive that all the archives were put on. Nobody knows where that is.
The key laptop with her archive supposedly was lost in the mail.
There are 13 mobile devices that may have synced with it. Nobody knows where they are.
13 devices over 4 years. Now, you know, we all have phones, but who goes through that many phones?
Anyone with any technical ability understands that when you're finished with a device, especially a device in this case that it turns out had classified information, you have to take very special steps to destroy that data. They took more extreme steps to delete the emails they felt were not government records.
What about these special access programs?
Special access programs, as I mentioned, are really the crown jewels for the U.S. intelligence community. These are programs that are only known by a small circle of people, and the reason that's the case is because human lives are really on the line. And what we see in the FBI interview is that she is asked about the 22 top secret emails that were too damaging to release for national security reasons because they relate to these programs. So we can see their questions about target selection for the drone campaign. We can also see there's a question about a human spy who was working for the CIA. This was a story first reported by Fox News. And we can also see that there's the discussion of a U.S. Army officer who was killed in Afghanistan, but a senior aide to Mrs. Clinton, or a longtime contact, essentially outed that person as someone who worked at the CIA after their death, and really effectively put that person's family at grave risk. It's shocking to me to see that that was, in fact, the case.
There are even some originators that even members of Congress cannot see the identity of them because of the nature of the information.
And what I would add is that the document says she can't recall the briefings and the declarations she made to the government about how she understood she would handle this information in an appropriate way. And she signed 2 of these non-disclosure agreements within just a matter of days of becoming Secretary of State, confirming to the government under oath that she understood the rules. Yet when she was questioned by the FBI, she was able to walk away from that interview saying, I don't remember, I don't recall, I didn't know.
It sounded like they were reading from a script and they weren't paying attention to the answers because there were very few follow-ups.
The FBI, after this report, said there's no basis. They said they had a unanimous decision within the agency that there was no basis for criminal action.
She seems profoundly uninformed, Kristen. She was not aware of hardware or software systems that she's dealing with on an hourly basis, was not aware of security concerns with private emails. Really? Could not give an example of classifying document. Did not think about whether a military document on a drone being used should be classified. I mean, an 8th grader probably knows that, a military document is secret.
It doesn't make her look particularly good, but that wasn't job 1 in that interview. Job 1 in that interview was to get out of it without being indicted.
And the other thing that really jumped out at me is this issue of intent. She said she couldn't really remember the circumstances around which they set up the ClintonEmail.com account in 2009. But the FBI agents, based on this document, they never press her on this issue. There's no follow-up.
He said he didn't go forward with charges because she didn't have specific criminal intent. I didn't see any questions on that.
It turns out, after the story broke in the New York Times, one of her computer people went and deleted her emails. This is after the news broke, and it looks like a meeting with her lawyer took place around the time that happened.
That's not a cover-up. That's a full-blown burqa.
If this were somebody of lesser power, there would be a you will plead or we will prosecute. No question at all.
I hesitate to be really critical of the FBI, but it feels like they were almost stenographers in this case and not really probing with their questions.
I know you thought it might be interesting if the American people could see who sent some of the emails that she received with the classified information. What do you mean by that? Why would that be so interesting?
Well, right now, even Congress can't see the identities of them. They are so classified that even a congressman in a skiff with no telephone, no iPad, no notes, cannot even see who the author or the originator of that email string was. That is how classified that information was that she was handling on a non-secure server.
I just don't think that this is very believable that she's like feigning this act of ignorance and throwing her staff under the bus.
Her colleagues were all interrogated under oath by Judicial Watch, and every single one of them said this was Mrs. Clinton's idea. The only one who didn't answer questions is the one to whom she paid $5,000. She didn't pay it, the Clinton Foundation did, to migrate her public and her secret email streams to the server in her house, which is what started all of this.
Well, this is a woman who's highly educated, who has been in on, Senate Armed Services Committee on classified briefings. There's no way that she wasn't aware of what needed to be classified, what was sensitive, and what could impact national security.
She keeps lying, and it's a drip, drip, drip. There was a report today in the New York Post, and now it's gone everywhere. We've seen the email. Apparently, months after she left the State Department, Secretary Clinton was still emailing classified material. It's now redacted by the State Department, a deal with the United Arab Emirates. So it's just one thing after another.
One of the criticisms I have heard consistently from people who've had security clearances is that if you had slapped another name on that file, that person would be in jail and not running for president of the United States.